Hi Tumblr, this is Flik, your stylist from askahairdresser.com. Welcome to my first tutorial. I apologize for the quality. I'm only working with my webcam and the microphone off of my laptop. But this is a makeup tutorial, as it should say in the description once I actually get this posted up. It's specifically a makeup tutorial for makeup that will last. Of course, you can use this for your daily makeup routine. I certainly do. But the people I had in mind for who would really benefit from this are costumers, cosplayers, actors, models, people who do not necessarily heavy makeup, but makeup in conditions where it's going to be hard to last, and who really need it to last. So, people who are in heavy costumes and are dancing around or pushing their way through, convention crowds, or are posing under hot lights all day. I use this routine, like I said, daily, but also I started using it because I also cosplay, and I'm also a bit of an actor. So I've used this in my off Broadway debut. I used this at New York Comic Con, at Otakon, at all of these conventions that I have worked before. And, I was wearing heavy makeup and heavy costume, and I had minimal makeup melting over the course of the day. So I want you all to benefit from my knowledge. Most of these, well, not most, some of the techniques I learned in school, but I've also adapted to myself because I have oily skin, and when people do makeup tutorials, they don't tend to take that kind of thing in mind. So the specific products that I'm using are designed with oily skin in mind. But that's not necessarily to say that if you don't have oily skin that you can't still use this. It's just that you might want to switch out the products that I'm going to tell you about in a second for lighter products. Because if you use the products that I'm using, it might end up being overkill, especially if you have dry skin. That's just not... I don't want to be responsible for you drying out your face. So the products that I'm going to be using that are specific to oily skin are this Neutrogena Shine Control Primer with rice protein. I don't know if you can quite see that. Rice protein complex. You can pick up Neutrogena products at pretty much any drugstore, that sells makeup. The Shine Control specifically is, again, for the oily skin. There is a step in the traditional steps of makeup application involve a step where you moisturize. So that is the step that this is going to be applied to. So if you have drier skin, if you don't have oily skin, use a moisturizer that works for you. That's not oil control, because you don't need the oil control. You don't need to be dried out any more than you already are. The other product is this. The one that I use is Rimmel Stay Matte Mousse Foundation. Again, something that you can pick up in pretty much any grocery store. Liquid mousse foundation, specifically. If you have oily skin, this product I use for my eyes as a primer, a base that goes on underneath the eyeshadow. For oily skin, you want to use a mousse foundation. You want to use something, a cream foundation, but a thick cream foundation. I've tried to use like regular cream foundations before, or even just regular foundations before on my eyes underneath the eyeshadow, and it just kind of slides right off. Like 10 minutes later, it's already creasing. It's terrible. So you want to use the mousse foundation. I think the brand I used before this was Maybelline. You might have to search around for it. They're not usually that easy to find. Yeah, I mean, you can pick them up in pretty much any drugstore. You just might have to dig through the aisles to find one specifically. Like I said, this is Rimmel. If you are not oily skinned, if you have normal or dry skin, you'll be better off using like a regular cream or just your basic foundation. What I was using before I realized that this was a bad idea for oily skin was this, which is a concealer set. I was going back and forth between the red and the yellow. This is just e.l.f.'s Corrective Concealer Palette. And you know, it's a cream. It's a thin cream, and it doesn't work for me. So that's what you can use if you don't have oily skin. So what I'm going to be doing today is just something really basic. If I might end up doing some more tutorials for like more elaborate actual looks, like the tutorials for an actual look, as opposed to just how to do your makeup. But for now, we're just going to keep to something really simple. The eyeshadow that I'm using is Coastal Scents. Their 252 palette. It comes in this cute little box. If I can get it over here. There we go. And it has 3 different palettes here with a variety of colors. It's just fabulous. It's amazing. I think I got it for like $30 off of Amazon, and there's definitely, you know, different companies that do similar palettes. This is the palette that I'm going to be using today, and the color that I'm going to be using is this one. You can't really see it that well. It's a sort of the shimmery, dusty rose. It's a color that I don't really use that much. I don't really get a chance to. So I'm going with a mono color, a single color, just because, you know, I have, like I said, I want to do something really basic, but I also have, if you can see, hooded eyes, right? So the crease comes down really far on my eyelid. So the basic looks where you have, like, you know, the light color on your eyelid and then the darker color on the crease, those don't really work that well for me. So what works more for hooded eyelids is just, you know, a single color or those smoky eye looks. And that's what I'm going to be doing today. So the first thing you want to do is, first of all, have tissues handy. You want to take one of those tissues and, you know, if you have oily skin, is wipe away all of that oil, blot away all of that oil. You know, just to get rid of it and start with a, you know, a nice dry palette. I already did that. So we're going to move on to the next step. This is a toner spray. You might recognize it as an e.l.f. bottle. It's not actually an e.l.f. product anymore in there. I just saved the bottle. I think it's, I don't even remember. So what you're just going to do, you're just going to give your face a little spritz to just sort of, you know, dampen it and get it nice and healthy and ready for the makeup. And keep that handy because this is also the last step. Alright, next we want to put on our moisturizer. You're actually going to let that, you know, dry a little bit, but it doesn't usually take that long because there's usually a certain amount of alcohol in it. So we're just going to take a little bit of our moisturizer, just a little bit, and you're going to work it all over your face. If you have oily skin, you're going to want to work it into parts of your face that are particularly prone to oil. So for me, that's actually my T-zone. So it's, you know, my nose, it's my chin, it's a bit of my forehead. but okay, it's also my eyelids. But your eyelids don't actually have any oil glands in them. They don't produce oil at all. They don't sweat. They don't produce oil. What actually happens is that the oil from your nose and the oil from your forehead seeps into them, and that's how you get oily eyelids. So it's not the fact that your eyelids are creating oil that you want to put the moisturizer into it to keep it from producing more oil. Rather, what you're doing is helping to block oil from coming down from your forehead or up from your nose and seeping into the crease and fucking everything up. So the moisturizer you want to let also sit and dry for a bit. And once you're done with that, you start with the eyes. I know a lot of people say to start with the face first, and that's perfectly fine. You know, to each their own. Everything works differently for different people. Personally, I have never found the advice to just, sprinkle some powder underneath your eyes and brush it away and everything will be fine. That's never worked for me. And I also have some serious anxiety about wasting product that way, like product that is relatively expensive. So I just do my eyes first, and that way I can wipe everything away after I do my eyes. So the products that you're going to need are, like I said, the primer, your mousse foundation if you have oily skin, or a cream foundation, or just your regular foundation if you don't have oily skin. You also want a translucent powder, a neutral powder, just something that is similar to the color of your eyelids already. What I use is e.l.f.'s translucent mattifying powder. You can use eyeshadow if you want. Like I said, it just, as long as it's a neutral powder that's similar in color to your naturally colored eyelid. You need your eyeshadow, obviously, and you need your tools, which, you can just use your finger to put on the primer, and then use, like, a sponge applicator if that's your thing. Like I said, everybody has different things that work for you. You also might want a tissue to brush off your brushes or whatever. Like I said, I use brushes. These are my brushes that I use to, first of all, apply the first coat here, because we're going on in 2 coats. The first one that I use, the one that I use to put on the primer, is e.l.f.'s Professional Foundation Brush. This is an artificial brush. I don't know if you can see. It's nylon or something, I think. And this is the brush that I use for the powder, which is also e.l.f. It's their eyeshadow brush. If you can see, it's a natural hair brush. It's a little flat and round and short. Now, the difference between a natural hairbrush and an artificial hairbrush. The artificial hair is usually, like I said, it's something like nylon, and it doesn't absorb moisture, which is why you generally find foundation brushes that are made from nylon or something similar. The natural hair brushes, which are usually like goat hair or something, I think this one is goat hair. They're perfectly not vegan, that's the wrong word, but they're perfectly animal safe. No harm came from the animals for the most part. Like most of the time, with most of these brushes, they just clip them off. They clip off the hair and they stick it into the brush, and no harm came from the animals. But because it's natural hair, it absorbs moisture. And so when you're using something that's really thick, like say a mousse foundation, a mousse cream foundation, it can gunk up the bristles a lot more in the natural hair brush than in, say, a nylon brush. So if you're like me and you aren't necessarily really studious about cleaning your brushes, then you end up with like a really gross, gunky brush, and it's kind of gross. So we are, and once I get to the eyeshadow, I'll show you what brushes I use for that. What you're going to do is you're going to squeeze a little bit of your primer onto your brush, and you're going to apply it to your entire eyelid, just like that. It doesn't have to be neat or pretty or anything. Just so that it's not necessarily really thick. And then you're going to take your neutral powder and you're going to just brush it over. And you want to try and keep your eye relatively shut throughout this process, because otherwise you might end up creasing. And you do each one separately because you want to try and not open your eye in between the process. Now, the whole point of doing this, right, is creating a barrier between your eye, or not your eye, but rather your eye makeup, and all of that oil and sweat and whatever liquid is fucking up your day. So doing this essentially just creates a shield between the oils in your skin and the sweat that your skin produces and the makeup that you have on that you don't want to get fucked up. So now that you have that, you can put away your translucent powder, or put it aside rather, and you're going on to your eyeshadow. Now these are the basic brushes that I use. This one is just a repeat of the other one. I have two separate versions of them, just because you don't want like cross-contamination with color. The reason that you use a neutral powder for this is so that you don't end up accidentally mixing colors and you end up with a completely different color than you really wanted. Like I said, this is just e.l.f.'s professional eyeshadow brush. Then this one is e.l.f.'s professional blending eye brush, which you can see is tubular, essentially. And that's exactly what I use it for, is blending. This one is actually by Fash. You can see it's thin and flat and round. I think it was originally a lip brush, but what I end up using it for was highlighting. You know, use whatever tools you need to get it done. It doesn't matter what the original label was. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your primer one more time and you're going to apply it to the part of your eye where you are going to apply your eyeshadow. Now the reason for this is, again, setting the makeup, but also what ends up happening is that when you apply eyeshadow to a wet surface as opposed to a dry one, is you get a much more vibrant color than if you were to just apply it to a dry surface. Now, obviously, I'm doing it all over my eye. And I just, I start with a base. When I'm doing this particular look, I just, go over the entire eyelid, not the entire eyelid, but like halfway up to the bone, for your eye socket. But if I was doing, that classic look, with the lighter shade on the eyelid and then the darker shade in the crease, I would only apply the eyeshadow, the first level eyeshadow, up to the point where I was going to apply the shadow in the crease, because then, again, I would get that vibrancy in the darker color also. Unless you're going for a more subtle look, that's entirely valid. It all depends on what you actually want to do. So now that I've got my pink, I'm going to go back in. I've got it all applied. I'm going to put away my primer because I'm done with it. And I'm going to go back in with my blending brush and just blend those edges. And I'm actually going to pull up a mirror here so that I can see a little bit better. There we go. Now, if you find that you end up blending a little bit too far up than you intended to, you can take a neutral powder and blend into it with that, and that'll help you. But this seems perfectly fine, so I'm just going to leave it. The other thing I like to do, just because I'm not a huge fan of just flat color, I'm going to take a slightly darker color, this one right here, and I'm going to apply it into the corners a bit, just to give it a little bit more depth. There. Do it to the other side too, and I do that with a blending brush because I don't want it really like dramatic. I just want it really soft and sort of subtle. Soft and subtle to me. Obviously, this might seem significantly more dramatic to other people, but your mileage may vary. I'm going to put that away, and then we're going to go into eyeliner. For the most part, I just use a plain black liner. It's so, you can do anything with it. You can do pretty much any look you want with it. And I'm just going to go ahead and apply it to the corners. If you don't want something as dramatic as the liner, as a pencil liner even, you can just use eyeshadow. Just take a small brush, like say this one, and just, brush around, use it like a pencil, with whatever color you want. And that way, you always have a color, an eyeliner, that matches the eyeshadow that you're using. And you don't have to worry about having a pencil that matches every single look you could possibly want. If, you're like me and you go through a different look every day. This is just an e.l.f. kohl liner. I prefer the kohl liners just because they're a little bit more creamy than your average pencil liner. There we go. the second step to my typical eyeliner routine is actually taking this brush, which is actually a smudging sponge. This is also by e.l.f. And taking a similar color, or the same color, or a darker color than I was using, and just smudging over it. Smudging over the eyeliner. Well, sometimes I use this, and sometimes I just use that lip brush that I was showing you before. It depends. You know, you use what you have and what you want to use. Actually, you know what? I think I am going to use that brush instead. There we go. Okay. There we go. Now, using eyeshadow instead of using a pencil eyeliner will give you a softer look. Using eyeshadow over a pencil liner will give you more of a smoky eye look. You know, again, depends on what you want to do. I feel a little like Bob Ross here. I wish I was Bob Ross. If anybody, you know, if you have questions about specifically what to do about a specific look, then, you know, feel free to just ask me. My ask box is always open, as is my submissions page. Alright, and then once we're done with that, we pick out a highlight color, which I'm just going to use this really pearly white for. There's no particular reason you need to highlight last. I just started doing it, I think, because I kept forgetting to do it, and so it just became a habit. And you don't necessarily have to use white. You can use gray, you can use yellow. It's just traditional to use a lighter color, slightly lighter color than your actual skin tone. Alright, so now that we've finished our eyes, you're not putting on mascara yet. That's at the end. So, we're going to clear away the powder, because that's just, this is what's easiest for me, like I said. So you're just going to take a tissue, or you could take a little bit of Vaseline or a little bit of makeup remover, whatever, and just brush it away, wipe it away. And then we're moving on to concealer, not foundation. I know that a lot of people kind of use the two interchangeably, but that's not the case. Okay. Concealer, the difference between concealer and foundation is that concealer is used to spot neutralize. You know, if you've got a hickey or a pimple or, you know, bags under your eyes, a concealer is used to neutralize those spots so that when you put the foundation on, the foundation is that thing that goes over your entire face. When you do that, then it creates a single color canvas. So this is my concealer palette. I showed it to you before. And I know a lot of people are confused about all those different colors and what the point of them is and how you even put them on without looking like a clown. This is e.l.f.'s concealer palette. You can see it has yellow, blue, green, and pink. This is where your color theory comes in. I'm going to make an actual post about this, but here is a basic rundown. in order to neutralize a color, you need to take a look at the primary colors that you're starting with and find the primary colors that you're missing and add them in, okay? So if you have redness on your face, you have a pimple, right? That's red. And so the primary colors that you're missing are blue and yellow. So in order to neutralize red, you have to add green. Then say you have purple bags under your eyes, like I do. Your starting color is purple. That means that the primary colors that you have are blue and red. And in order to finish that primary color wheel, then you need yellow. So in order to neutralize purple, you add yellow. That's what you're doing. Now I have, like I said, purple bags under my eyes. So I'm starting with the yellow, and I'm just brushing it on underneath. You don't necessarily have to blend it perfectly. Now the reason that this doesn't show up, it doesn't make you look like a clown, is that because one, the colors are neutralizing each other, and two, as you can see, the colors are all pastels. So they are similar in tone to your actual skin color, assuming that you're white or, you know, lighter skinned. I'm sure there are palettes out there for darker skinned people. I certainly hope so. So right, my other problem issues, I have a little white spot up here, or purple spot up here. Because I sit like that when I'm watching TV all the time. I also have redness up here, so I'm applying a little bit of green. And redness down here. I do have redness on my cheeks, but I don't want to do anything to them because you're just putting blush over there anyway, or I am. Sometimes I do, just because the costume that I'm doing, the makeup look that I'm doing along with it requires a really pale, a really uniform color so that it looks kind of creepy and ghostly. So if you're doing that, then yeah, absolutely, just go all out. But I am not for now. I also have red over here, so I'm doing more of the green. And down here. I'll also do it over my lips when I do that really creepy ghostly thing. But again, not doing it right now. I have some spots over here. Some redness. Down here. Yeah, that's about it. And then what you want to do, again, because we set our cream makeup with powder before we move on, is just take a little bit of your neutral powder and just sort of lightly brush over all of that. There we go. Okay. So now you're done with your neutral powder, and you can put that away. I can put it away. Actually, no, I'm going to keep it out because I might need that mirror again. Then we're moving on to foundation. Now, the foundation that I use is actually 2 different foundations, which is a totally valid thing to do, and is actually something that a lot of professional makeup artists do. My problem, right? I have a skin color that is some awkward place in between yellow and red, because those are the 2 base colors, the base underlying tones in your hair. Your skin. It's either yellow or red. But I come from a very strong-blooded Italian family, on one side and Irish on the other side, so I have this weird Italian tone with an Irish complexion. So I'm this, my skin is too red for yellow foundations and it's too yellow for red foundations. So I just take these two foundations. You can sort of see the difference between them. This is the red one and this is the yellow one. And I mix them together, which is a thing that you should do if you're having trouble matching a foundation to your skin. So I just take a little bit of both and then mix them together. The foundation that I'm using is just NYC, New York Colors, which is, it's about the same price range as Wet n Wild. So it's relatively cheap to pick up two. So that's what I would recommend doing if you are like me and you are in between colors. So now, okay, you look at my face and I look kind of weird. Admit it. Don't be afraid of looking weird halfway through your process. You're going to look weird. You're not done yet. You're not going outside just like this. So I want you to watch the transformation, right? We're going to put on our foundation, just smearing it in key spots all over. And I'm going to take my kabuki brush. I got this from e.l.f. The reason that I use this one particularly is because it buffs really nice. Like, it just smooths everything out and you don't get the same streak as you do from a less puffy brush. So right, I'm just going to buff everything out and you'll watch everything get sort of smoothed over the color. There we go. I love this brush. It can be really expensive if you buy it from, MAC or something, but brushes are going to be expensive if you buy them from MAC anyway. But e.l.f. I think had this for like $5, which is a great price for such a poofy brush. Notice that I'm also blending back onto my ears and down my neck because that is actually a mistake that a lot of people make. I don't want to say mistake. Mistake is the wrong thing. Is the wrong word. But in order to make it look like you're not just wearing like a latex mask over your face, you want to, blend it back onto your ears and down onto your neck and up into your hairline, which is why you should be doing your makeup before you ever put your wig on if you're cosplaying or if you're doing a show that requires you to wear a wig. Right. So I just lost my mascara. Once you finish your foundation, then I usually go ahead and do my eyebrows, which I do with the sponge brush again. Although sometimes I do it with the lip brush also. Sorry about that. So I use the sponge brush usually, and because my eyebrows are so dark, I don't usually dye them or anything. I don't really feel the need to. I usually just pick a medium to dark color and just go with that. Sometimes I'll just do a brown just to fill in my natural brown. Sometimes I'll do a black if I want something more dramatic. Half the time, what I usually end up doing is just taking the darker color from whatever I used on my eyes and just going with that. I've gone to work a few times with like green or blue tinted eyebrows and nobody said anything. So you're just going to do little soft strokes. Just kind of blending it in. It's a bit of a different technique than if you're using a pencil, but it's more of a foolproof technique. Because I find, pencils are really iffy, because you need a particularly delicate hand. If you go too hard, you're going to end up with like a streak of a single, quote-unquote hair. Whereas this is just filling in the spaces in between. And see, there you go. Next is the blush. The blush. I also use the kabuki brush for my blush. And, okay, here's another thing about the blush. I am using 3 colors. You don't have to. There's absolutely no reason for you to use 3 colors if you don't want to. The colors that I'm using are this dark pink. It's CoverGirl. I believe it's Rock and Rose. I think that's the color that it says in the back. I'm also using this medium pink from Maybelline on their Fit line. And then I have this really light shimmery pink from e.l.f. called Glow. You can't really see how shimmery it is, but whatever. The reason I use these 3 colors is just to create a little bit more depth, but there's absolutely no need for you to use 3 colors if you don't want to. So what I have here, with the dark color, I'm using this angled blush brush. Well, okay, e.l.f. calls it a bronzing brush, but whatever. So I'm just going to take a little bit of that dark color and apply it right underneath my cheek and blend it back onto the ear, again, up into the temple for a little bit of extra contouring. Like, really light contouring. This isn't me trying to change the shape of my face. It's more accenting the shape that I already have and sort of, adding shading where I took it away. Right, so then I like to take it a little bit up onto the sides of my forehead. Down the sides of my nose. And over my chin. And then I take the kabuki brush again, and I take that medium color, and I go over sort of the mid-range. Not, the top of the cheek versus the bottom, but somewhere in the middle to sort of soften that really dark pink and still create color. And just take a little bit over there. And then I take that really light pink, which I like because, as somebody with oily skin, it can be really dangerous using products with shimmer in it, because instead of just giving you a healthy natural glow like it gives everybody else, supposedly, it just makes you look like you have an oil slick under it. But rather, this actually gives some sort of nice shimmer. And I just do it on the tops of my cheeks. And you see, it doesn't really, because it's so light, it doesn't really give much color, which is perfectly fine. There are cats. Go over my eyes, my forehead, chin, nose. Done! That's it. Then we are taking translucent powder. I use a separate one than I use on my eyes. This is Palladio's rice powder, which I've had for like 2 years now, and it's still basically full because you don't want to use a lot of powder, is the thing. I'm using a very little amount of powder. Like, I usually just take whatever crumbs and bits have, dislodged themselves from the box and are sort of sitting on top of the applicator that they provide, and go from there. There you go. That's all the powder I'm using in this one stroke, right? Okay, here we go. You're just brushing it all over. Everywhere that you applied makeup, you're applying this powder, including your eyes. I just do like one swipe. You might want to do more, depends on, the kind of eyeshadow you're using, the kind of eyeliner you did, whatever. Under the eyes. But again, you're using very little at a time. And this is how your makeup, your powder is going to last you like 5 years. And again, you're doing this before you do your mascara. Because if you do it after you do your mascara, what's going to end up happening is you get powder all over your mascara and you end up with white eyelashes. If you don't have them already. We're going to put that away. And then you're taking the mascara. I like Maybelline. I know a lot of professional makeup artists use Maybelline also. The specific one that I have is the Colossal Volume Express. The cat eye. If you can see the little cheetah print I have there. For me personally, their mascara works the best. I don't even necessarily need to use fake eyelashes when I use this stuff, because it's just that good. Which isn't to say, there aren't more expensive lines that are better. I got a free tube of Cargo mascara a little while ago, which was amazing. Like, I was honestly shocked at how much more it was. How much more it did to my eyelashes than this does. But, not everybody can afford Cargo. The only reason I had it was because, like I said, it was a free gift. And Maybelline can be found in basically any grocery store, any drugstore, any store that sells makeup. Notice that I'm doing lower lashes before I do the upper lashes, because if you do the upper lashes first, then you're going like that, and you end up with little polka dots on your finished eye makeup, which is never fun. Maybelline is obviously, it's more expensive mascara than, say, Wet n Wild or New York Colors. But if you can afford it, I think it's worth it, and I think Maybelline is definitely one of the better drugstore brands as far as mascara goes. I think they're the only. This is really the only thing I'm like really keen about. Like, if you ask me to recommend you a beauty product, then this is the one that I'm going to recommend you. Everything else would be like, well, whatever works for you. And I'll still say, whatever works for you, but this one seems to be pretty consistent across the board. So, once you've done that, you're going to do lipstick, which is always fun. The trick to doing lipstick to actually stay is lip liner, which I'm actually using a black lipstick today, and you don't technically find black lip liners, but here I have a black eyeliner, and I'm just going to use that instead. And I wish I could talk while I was doing this. But you're just going to line your lips. And then you're going to fill them in. Trying to keep the mirror so that you guys can actually see what I'm doing. Now the reason that you do this is because not only does it actually help keep your lipstick from wearing off in a similar way that doing the powder, the primer and then the powder and then the primer and then your eyeshadow does. It also will help mask it when it does start to wear off, because it's going to start to wear off. That's just a given. There is no such thing as permanent makeup without getting a tattoo, which that is also a thing. I just want you all to know. But because the pencil won't wear off as quickly as the lipstick will, having the pencil on will also, like I said, it will mask when your lipstick starts wearing off. Now the other thing that you want to really look for is a matte lipstick, if you can. Matte lipsticks consistently across the board, it doesn't matter what company, will actually last longer than any of the shimmery lipsticks, the wet look lipsticks, doesn't matter. You know, you can get a wet look lipstick from friggin' MAC. I don't care. It's not going to last as long as a matte lipstick from Wet n Wild if you put it on properly. Which I will also show you, though unfortunately this is a wet look lipstick, a shine lipstick, whatever. So it's not ideal. And there we go. Now, what you need in order to put on your lipstick properly, once you have lined yourself, is obviously your lipstick. This is Wet n Wild's Fergie line. The lipstick is Pagan Angel. You can see it's just black, which I was super excited about because the only time I've ever seen black lipstick in a grocery store, in a drugstore, is during Halloween. And even last Halloween, I wasn't able to find black lipsticks from Wet n Wild even, which is so sad. So anyway, you also need a tissue because we're going to blot. You're just going to put on a coat of lipstick. Just put on, not very thick or anything, just a coating. And you're going to let that, you know, ideally you're letting it sit for a few minutes just to let it dry. But I don't have that much time. This video is almost an hour long. So you're just going to take your tissue once you let it set, you know, unless you don't have the time like I don't, and you're going to blot. And what this does, it takes off the excess lipstick. So it's not taking off all of it, or at least it shouldn't. If it is, then I'm sorry, but you bought a crap lipstick. And you need to get another one. This is why I only deal with mattes. Because the wet look lipsticks come off way too well, and it takes way too many blottings to actually get anything done. So you're going to keep applying. I'm actually not even going to bother at this point, because I can just tell you, you keep applying until you've got the color and the opaqueness that you want. Apply, blot, apply, blot, apply, blot. And this goes so much better with a matte lipstick. And once you've done that, you take your toner spray again, and you give yourself a little misting. To set everything. And you're done. Thank you for watching. I will be posting up pictures from later in the day. Possibly, I might even jump into the shower with this and see what happens. See if it really does anything awful. And take after pictures. I'll take a before picture and an after picture, and I'll post them up on the blog. Let me know if there are any specific tutorials that you would like me to also do. And I will see you all around. Check out my blog, askahairdresser.tumblr.com. All one word, no underscores or anything. It should be in the description. I'll try to remember to put it there. And that's about it. I'm Flik. Have a great day.